Welcome to the City of Prineville podcast. I'm your host, Bill Minteens, and I have the pleasure of introducing you to the people who serve the city, both employees and those who volunteer their time in order to make life in Prineville better for everyone. My guest today is Eric Klann, City Engineer and Public Works Director for the City of Prineville. We're going to be discussing the drought declaration that Governor Brown declared on April 6th of 2015 and what that means for the City of Prineville. But first, let's learn a little bit about Eric Klann.
I was lucky to be born and raised in Prineville, Oregon. I went to school at Oregon State, graduated in mechanical engineering, and was lucky enough to be able to come back home. I graduated in 2000 and worked for American Pine Wood Grain Millworks for 7 years as their plant engineer. My family originally came to Crook County in 1860. So at that time, Crook County was a big county. They settled in the Ashwood area and then on to Grizzly Mountain. So I have a 6-year-old and 4-year-old. They're 8th generation, which is pretty neat. We just obviously really like it here.
So what exactly does a Stage 1 drought alert mean for the City of Prineville?
Last winter was very, very dry, which resulted in Governor Kate Brown declared a drought emergency for Crook County. Certain features within the Water Conservation Plan kick into place. With that, we enter into a Stage 1 water alert status when one of 3 issues come up. Either a drought emergency is declared or our supply capacity drops down to below 100% of what the demand is. And the goal of a Stage 1 water alert status is to try to reduce our demand by 10%. The things that we always ask our customers to do, like the odd even watering, we want to re-emphasize that and let people know how important that is. And then we just want to make our customers aware that it is a very, very significant drought. Anything they can do to conserve water helps the city. So if that's sweeping off your driveway instead of washing it off, every little bit helps.
So the logical question is, how much water does Prineville use during a year?
The city of Prineville, we have a population of just under 10,000 people. During the winter, when no one's irrigating, we use a little bit less than 1 million gallons of water a day. During the summer, when it's hot, that jumps up to over 5 million gallons of water a day. So you can see what that irrigation demand does to our water system. We have to have the capacity to provide over 5 million gallons of water a day. And unfortunately, that capacity is not used for most of the year, so it's very expensive for us to meet those peak demands. And if people don't conserve water and that demand goes up to 6 million gallons, then that means I got to go drill more wells, build more water storage tanks. And as people conserve water, you can imagine we use 1 million gallons of water during the winter, up to 5 million during the summer. Without irrigation, potentially the city of Prineville's population could grow 5-fold without having to make improvements to the water systems.
So what can Prineville people do now to conserve water?
Things to conserve water that we can all do. We should do these year-round, but maybe it's more important during the summer than ever before, are indoors. You can take shorter showers. Maybe the biggest thing you can do is check your toilet for leaks. A leaking toilet uses an amazing amount of water. You'll definitely notice that on your bill if you have a leaking toilet. And then you can also install more water efficient features, shower heads, faucet aerators. City of Prineville at City Hall, we have different items from time to time, be it faucet aerators that we hand out, shower heads that we hand out. We also hand out irrigation metering devices. You put them in your yard and you can see how much water your sprinklers are putting down.
And what about outdoor water conservation?
Outdoors, big things you can do is irrigate at night. If you irrigate at night when it's cool, the majority of that water is going to work its way down into the ground. Double check your sprinklers. If you are only irrigating at night, sometimes it's good to run them in the morning so you can make sure they're irrigating correctly and they're running for the correct amount of time. Look for the water leaks in the irrigation system. Just spend a little bit of time with that. And then things such as washing cars, your driveways, things like that. Just be cognizant of the water you're using.
So the big question is, should residents be concerned that water will actually dry up?
We have plenty of capacity. There is no imminent issues coming up. However, if a drought continues, that's when a deep water aquifer like ours will start to be impacted. So typically you won't see it in the first year, maybe not the second year, but as a drought persists, that's when your groundwater tables will start to diminish. And so we just want to do everything we can to make sure that doesn't become an issue.
Klann has been reviewing forecasts and is concerned about this coming winter.
I think it's important for people to appreciate the significance of the drought we're currently in. It was approximately like 89% of the snow-tell sites in Oregon this year in April set records for lack of snow or no snow. That's pretty significant. 89% of the snow-tells set records. We aren't feeling the impacts of the drought this year because our reservoirs were full. Those reservoirs really have a 1-year buffer capacity in them. However, the inflow to those reservoirs has gone to nothing. So typically we get snow in the mountains, that snow builds up all winter long, and then throughout the spring and early summer it heats up, the snowpack melts, and those inflows come into our river.
Back in July of 2015, Klann was clearly concerned about the inflows to the Crooked River.
I was looking at inflows into Crook River a few weeks ago, and on that date, 2 weeks ago, the inflows would typically be around 300 CFS. So CFS is a cubic foot per second. That's about 445 gallons a minute per CFS. So on an average year, it would be 300 CFS. We were at 2 CFS already. So that tells you there was no snow. Whatever moisture in the hills were there is gone.
So our two reservoirs, the Ochiko and the Prineville Reservoir, could be severely hurt in 2016 if the drought continues.
Our reservoirs, while they're getting us through this year, they're very, very much being taxed. And so the potential exists is if we go into another dry year, that's where we're really going to feel the drought.
So weather predictions are for a dry winter again this year.
What we really, really need is a wet, cold winter coming up. Unfortunately, that's not what's predicted. NOAA has recently announced some long-range weather forecasts that are calling for a super El Nino. So an El Nino event is when you have a warm pocket of water out in the Pacific. What that does is it affects the weather patterns as they come through the Northwest. So what they're expecting is it to be significantly warmer this coming winter and also significantly drier.
A super El Nino has implications for the city of Prineville.
What that means to the city of Prineville is that we want to conserve every gallon of water that we can. You know, maybe the super El Nino is wrong, but we probably better plan for it to be correct. So whatever we can do to conserve water this year means that we're not taxing our aquifers as hard so that then they won't be as susceptible to an ongoing drought. I know the irrigation districts, they're conserving water. The allocation for the irrigators was less this year because of the potential for a dry next year. But at the end of the day, every gallon of water that we don't waste, we don't have to pump, so it remains in the aquifer for us to use at a future date.
So what happens in a worst case scenario?
More than likely, we'd go into another drought declaration with the governor. So that would automatically drop us into a stage 1 water alert status where we are today, where we just communicate with our customers, ask them to conserve water, and more than likely 2 years of significant drought, our city water system would not be adversely affected. An aquifer, groundwater aquifer, there is a significant lag between a drought event and when you see the water table diminish. However, the city doesn't have the best data of how our aquifers handle drought events. So as we move forward, we'll continue to very, very closely watch our aquifers, and then really we'll know this early next spring and early summer what our capacities will be.
And what if we get little or no moisture this coming fall and winter?
If that happens, then we would have to go into a stage 2 water curtailment, and that's a serious water shortage. And so what that would mean is that we don't have the capacity to keep up with our demand. We would ask our customers to do everything they can to lower consumption by 20%. And so, once again, there would be no official requirements, but just that communication to the public that we're stressed, we are really scrambling for water. What can they do to turn that down?
And then there's the dreaded stage 3.
That's when it gets very, very serious, a stage 3, and that's when we start making mandatory requirements, no irrigation, things like that.
So like many people, I wonder how our situation compares to California's.
I study water rights and aquifers significantly, and that's, one thing for people in Oregon to understand is Oregon is light years ahead of California as far as water rights go and protection of resources. There's still communities and areas in California where it's drill, 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 no water rights, just whoever can get to the water gets the water. It's unfortunate because you see those aquifers being over allocated and it's just not sustainable what they're pumping out of there. The state of Oregon has done a much better job with that, but in a prolonged drought, you never know.
As you can tell, Eric Klann is a very sharp engineer who cares deeply for our community. But he's also known as the City of Prineville's resident comedian, always lightening up city staff meetings.
I'm a lucky guy. I get to do what I like every day. I got to come back to the city that I love to go to work, and it's a big job. I probably do 2 or 3 different jobs in a given day, but we all have fun, and I enjoy what I do, and it's best to, if you're going to have to be at work, you might as well have fun.
Just like the guy whose feet are too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit. Those raindrops are falling on my head, they keep falling.
Thanks for listening to the City of Prineville podcast. I'm Bill Minteens, and I hope you'll listen to all of our future podcasts, but should you miss one, you can always find them on our Facebook page titled, not surprisingly, City of Prineville.